What is going on YouTube? This is Jim back with another video. While the world burns, the fanboy flames are only getting hotter. Today we saw PlayStation's very own Mark Cerny talk in front of a, I believe, fake audience. I'm not really sure. Today on a simulated weird blue screen thing, talking all about PlayStation 5's journey to existence. He talked a lot about key tenets regarding the console and some of the design philosophies. And then he ultimately went into some technical specifications. And now that it's all said and done, I think we can do a good video, we being me and my one-eyed dog behind me, for you guys today to talk all about the differences between the Xbox Series X announcements and the PlayStation 5 announcements. I had debated doing a video on the Xbox Series X because it is a very, very impressive piece of hardware. There are a lot of things that Microsoft seems to be doing that really align with their design values and their design philosophies of the Xbox One X, which is a phenomenal console for a litany of reasons. And it seems that the team over at Microsoft has really channeled a lot of that energy back into their design. That said, when they announced that they were going to be releasing some of the technical specifications in a partnership with Digital Foundry, I didn't really think a video would be warranted for that because honestly, you can read it on your own and you don't really want to hear me ramble on about a lot of mumbo jumbo in terms of technical performance. I mean, I could. I'm very interested in it as a PC gamer. That's definitely something we look at as we build our own rigs and try to squeeze out every bit of performance we can with with different components. Obviously, both Microsoft and Sony are doing this, but I didn't think you'd care about it. But now that we have a PlayStation product somewhat on the shelf, and a Microsoft product somewhat on the shelf, we can kind of start to pick apart the two and kind of see what makes them tick, and really more from a perspective of what does a gamer want to see in these things, and really kind of who is winning the infamous console wars of 2020. It still remains to be seen, by the way, if these consoles do come out at the end of the year. I know a lot of manufacturing happens overseas, and it's very, very clear that the world's going through a very tough time. My beloved Best Buy, as a matter of fact, announced today that they would limit their stores to 10 people at a time, excluding employees, and you would be escorted through the store by an employee while you shopped. That's crazy. That's crazy for me because I have some very fond memories of going to Best Buy when I was a kid and talking with other teenagers and kind of identifying as a gamer. And that's sad. That really is. This world's changing very rapidly, and it is disheartening. And I'm going off on a little tangent here, but my point is I'm not entirely sure if we're going to get to see these consoles this year. But the designs are largely done, I think, much more on the Microsoft side than on the PlayStation side, because Microsoft showed us the box. A lot of people are very, very fascinated by the box. Form factor is incredibly important in this generation of consoles. It was definitely a major talking point of last generation. I think a large reason that the original Xbox One was so poorly received is that it was very large, it was very ugly, and it could not be orientated horizontally or vertically. Something that had really been a staple of a lot of consoles up at that point. So that was a very odd design choice by them. Thankfully, as we always talk about on this channel, Phil Spencer has done an incredible job of turning that company around in so many ways, one of which being this phenomenal form factor. And we're going to see that it appears to be at least coming up on the Series X, which I believe can be orientated either way. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe I'm speaking out of turn. Leave a comment below. Let me know if I'm wrong. But seeing the box is a big deal. And PlayStation has not yet shown the box. Now, Mark Cerny did give, in my opinion, a very inspirational, maybe is not the right word. I wasn't necessarily inspired. I'll go with inspirational, but he gave a very informative speech explaining his inspiration. We'll go with that. His inspiration on kind of how this console came to be. He talked a lot about dealing with industry partners and kind of what core values they looked at and how they could align the hardware, always being conscientious of that infamous budget versus performance that we always see going on. I mean, my graphics card on my computer downstairs was $1,500. It is the most powerful graphics card right now in the world, but it costs $1,500 for the graphics card. Clearly, a lot of people, if they saw a sticker shock, would be, if a console was like $3,000, people would be like, well, that's too much. So he has to be conscientious of that. And I'm not saying that Microsoft wasn't. Of course they're going to be. But it's very clear that they took two very different philosophies between how they want to squeeze out as much performance as they can. Microsoft definitely seems ahead of the curve, giving a lot of information to Digital Foundry for their teardown pack and kind of rebuilding of the console together. They talk a lot about the cooling that they have, and they talk a lot about the different components that really make the console more of a premium console. These things, if you recall, were very, very discussed very heavily rather, during the Xbox One X reveal when they announced that, hey, we have the S, but now we're going to come out with the X, and it's going to have liquid cooling, and it's going to have this type of form factor, and it's going to and on and on and on, right? These things matter when you start to talk more of a premium space, and it's very clear that Microsoft took that approach from the X into the Series X because that thing seems to be built very, very well, and it seems to be more of that amazing performance that we can expect. And that's exactly where Microsoft needs to be, and I'm very happy for that. On the other hand, with Sony, the PlayStation 4 Pro is not the most powerful console of the two. Definitely the Xbox One X is a monster, as they say. It is definitely better in terms of performance. So it's interesting to look and see what Sony kind of brings to the table. And it is, once again, at least on paper, more of a weaker offering, which is very interesting. Sony had a great opportunity here to kind of go back to the drawing board if they wanted to. I understand that most of these designs have been solidified for a very long time. There are no doubt already development kits in the world for game developers who are actively working on them, most likely first-party studios. Obviously Halo Infinite is going to be coming to the Series X. We know that there are, they've announced that one game, Greedfall, for the PlayStation 5. So it's very clear that these consoles are, in fact, out in the wild, and a lot of these specifications are done. That said, the fact that Sony waited so long to announce something and finally to come out with something, today, even though we've kind of gotten a lot of insider information on what the X is, surprising that it's not as powerful, and surprising that Mark Cerny spent so long putting a spin on why teraflops and other things don't matter. And I largely agree with him on a lot of stuff he said, but it doesn't matter what I think. I'm just one person. But I will say this in closing. Looking at the two consoles, very, very different design approaches. I think PlayStation, if there is a scoreboard here, definitely behind right now in terms of popular opinion, at least in terms of this initial, kind of how the two consoles came into the world. Xbox is doing that awesome release during the Game Awards, basically showing off the hardware, saying, yes, it's coming, yes, we have it. Really putting their foot down early and very unexpectedly. I mean, that was definitely one of the highlights of the show, in my opinion. Sorry, I got beard hair. But you look at the PlayStation announcement, and we haven't really seen a lot. And then they had this very odd developer type conference today, which definitely was polarizing to the PlayStation Nation. I am 100% certain of that. I found it interesting, but I'm a big dork and an engineer and a PC gamer. All these things very fascinating to me, but to the layman, probably not as much. I think now that we are entering this kind of second phase of the console wars, we're going to start to see performance. I think all the groundwork has been laid in terms of teraflops and nanobytes and whatever. Make up any acronym or adjectives you want. It doesn't matter. But the truth of it is, and has always been, what are the games and how does this thing work in terms of the overall wrapper, in terms of the overall experience of the game. And I really hope, truly really hope, that both consoles come out swinging with their A game. And as much as I am a Sony guy, and I think I've been pretty clear on this channel that I will be picking up a PlayStation 5, I will not be picking up an Xbox Series X, at least not at launch. I think the Game Pass offerings on PC are very generous right now, and there's a lot of cross-play. I'm not worried about missing out on stuff, but I will miss out on stuff on PlayStation 5 if I don't jump onto it. That said, I think Sony's got a lot to prove, a lot more than Microsoft does in terms of their games. And games do sell consoles. So as we enter the second phase and we start to get to see some gameplay footage, you know, I want to know, what does Halo Infinite look like? Does it run the way that I think it should? Does it look phenomenal? That's going to turn some heads. If Sony comes out and kind of waffles and doesn't have some major hits to show right away, I think the narrative is definitely there that Xbox really kind of killed it. They announced things early. They were very confident in their announcements. They announced Halo Infinite a long time ago. They announced their console first. They've got the Elite Controller Series 2 already lined up. And Sony's kind of just waffling. I don't necessarily think that's the case, but you have to understand, in the court of popular opinion, this stuff absolutely matters. It absolutely determines sales, and it really does lay out the trajectory of the console generation. We always talk about Don Matrick on the show and what an idiot he was and how he almost absolutely tanked what happened to the Xbox One at launch. It took Phil Spencer a very long time in Damage Control to try to turn that around, at least from a public narrative. Sales are a totally different factor. I've gone on long enough. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully it took your mind off all the nonsense going on the world outside. Please wash your hands. Don't touch your face. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.